My name is Sahar Aziz. I'm a visiting professor at Princeton University School of Public and International Affairs. And I'm also a faculty member at Rutgers University Law School in Newark and a Chancellor Social Justice Scholar. And I am the founding director of the Center for Security, Race, and Rights. Now, one of the areas in which I've committed a significant amount of my research time and my teaching and my praxis work has been in exploring the intersection of national security and civil liberties and civil rights, particularly how they impact Muslim, Arab, and South Asian communities. And what my research has shown is that instead of being treated like a religious minority that deserves to be protected by First Amendment rights that protect religious freedom, or other statutory rights that are intentionally aimed to prevent the persecution of religious minorities in the United States, what I found is that Muslims are overtly targeted by national security laws and practices. They are explicitly vilified by elected officials, and they are almost exclusively portrayed through a terrorist lens. And so as a result, this religious minority, Muslims in the United States, is in fact being treated in a way that completely contradicts our commitments to religious freedom norms. Is instead of protecting them from persecution, their religious identity invites religious persecution by private actors, by the nation, by the government, and by institutions. So that led me to ask a deeper question, which is, why would a country that privileges religious freedom in its laws and in its social norms so overtly, explicitly, and acceptably discriminate against Muslims in various forums? And as I started researching that issue, because it truly is a paradox, I started to discover that religion has in fact always produced a form of racialization against various religious minorities. And that in fact the post 9/11 era, where Muslims are so openly discriminated against, is a continuation of a checkered history. One in which Jews and Catholics and Mormons, particularly in the early 20th century, were also targeted on account of their religious identity, and targeted for discrimination, whether it was in immigration laws, whether it was in quotas for work and quotas in Ivy League universities, whether it was targets of hate crimes. But it was their religious identity that caused people to believe that they were inferior, or that they were disloyal or a threat to the country. And so what effectively is happening is a racialization of religion. It is taking a religious group and kicking them outside of religious freedom norms by racializing them, by interpreting their religious identity in the same way that we frequently would interpret someone's skin color or someone's hair texture or facial features in the social construction of race in the United States. And so instead of simply because you are dark-skinned or you are African American, which is the most quintessential form of racialization, similarly with Native Americans, with Latinx, but we also do it with religious minorities, and specifically Muslim identity, which is what I go into extensive depth about in my book, The Racial Muslim: When Racism Quashes Religious Freedom. And so there are multiple lessons that I think arise from my research, but the one that resonates with me the most is that religious freedom has and always been and continues to be racially circumscribed. And so we need to be much more critical about who actually benefits from religious freedom and who doesn't get any, and who gets some religious freedoms, and what is that criteria. And so what I proffer is how you are raised certainly affects the extent to which you will benefit from the full panoply of religious freedom rights. And finally, I think it's important for Americans who themselves may feel that their religious freedom rights are under attack, such as evangelical Christians, for them to self-reflect and ask, why do they, in poll after poll, why does that particular set of communities tend to hold such unfavorable views of Muslims? And why do they support national security policies and practices that clearly target and profile Muslims at the expense of their liberty, at the expense of their right to be in the country? And why do they do that without feeling that they're being religious bigots or that they're discriminating based on a religious group, particularly when they also claim that their own religious freedoms are under attack by so-called secular elites? So I do hope that we think more critically about this intersection of race and religion, and that we hold ourselves accountable to living and acting and behaving in ways that are consistent with and reflect our values that we state and that we write in our U.S. Constitution and our state constitutions.